Alright, what's up, everybody? I thought I would do one of these political compass tests. I've taken this one before. This is the one over at Spekr. I will leave a link in the description for anybody who isn't familiar with this. I've taken this test before, but it's been 2 or 3 years since the last time. And I just kind of want to see where I stack up. I remember I got libertarian capitalist every time I took it, and that's what I expect to get now. But I do like this test more than the other more popular political compass test because I think the questions here are much more direct, and I think you just get like a more accurate result through this. But I'm really curious to see where exactly I come up on this one. And one thing I really don't care for about the speaker test is I don't like seeing this. I don't like seeing this thing move with every question that I answer. I think a lot of the times that can kind of drive the questions you get, obviously, because you can go back and you can go forward. And if people want to end up in a certain quadrant, I think a lot of the times that can shape how they answer things. So I'm actually going to get rid of that before we start here. Just a second. Just going to crop that right off the screen because all we really need to see is the answer, or excuse me, the question. So let's start. I think this was the beginning. Yeah. Each individual enjoys bodily autonomy and have rights that no other individual or group may violate. I say yes to that. Absolutely to that. Individuals have the freedom to decide what they knowingly and voluntarily consume. Yes, I think you do have the freedom to know. Slavery is acceptable in certain circumstances, such as punishment for a crime. I'm going to say absolutely not. But also, some of the times, I get kind of caught up on, like, the word uses here. Because, obviously, slavery, you could also say, in a sense, incarceration is some form, like, at least related to that. But then again, acceptable in circumstances such as punishment for a crime. I'm just going to say no. Because, who the fuck wants to say that slavery is acceptable in certain circumstances? Freedom of expression should be unhindered by government, regardless of the content. Abso-fucking-lutely, sir. Hate speech should be banned. Not a chance. Absolutely not. The control of communications by government is necessary so as to prevent the spread of ideas that may undermine the stability of a nation. Not at all, sir. Provision of the internet should be socialized and made available free of charge. No, you should have to pay. If you want the internet, you should have to consume that product voluntarily with someone who will give it to you voluntarily. You do not have the right to empower the state to take someone's money or product to give it to you. People should be free to engage or abstain from religious activities that do not violate the right of others. Absolutely. I totally support freedom of religion. Blasphemy laws should be reinstated. No. Government action should neither aid nor attack religion. Absolutely. So far, these questions are pretty black and white. I'm not getting any I don't knows in here. Religious organizations should not be exempt from taxation. See, now here's a tough question. This is a tough question because I think if we're all paying taxes, it's only fair that religions, unless they can show they're doing something directly charitable and helpful, I think that religions should have to pay, like churches should have to pay taxes if we're going to pay them. But I also don't think we should pay them. I don't think anybody should pay taxes. I do believe taxation to be theft. I think they're the same thing. It is extortion at gunpoint. You either pay it, or men with guns, they either fine you or they find you. How about that? They either fine or find you. So, should not be exempt from taxation. This one I'm going to have to leave here in the middle. Because I don't think anybody should have to pay taxes. I think we should all be exempt from taxation. So I have to kind of leave this one alone. I don't exactly know how to answer that in this context. You have nothing to fear if you have nothing to hide is a valid statement. No. No. Not a fan of that. Government transparency is vital to ensuring accountability. I absolutely agree with that. Government surveillance should be expanded to combat terrorism. No, see, we've tried that, and we've kind of lost the Fourth Amendment. People should be secure in their persons, homes, property, and communications. That is the Fourth Amendment, which I do support, which is why I don't support that last question. In order to solve crimes, the police need the power to conduct searches and seizures without consent or a warrant. No. You You should have to have some sort of justification for harassing someone. Sexual orientation, preference, gender, or gender identity should have no impact on the government's treatment of individuals. This is a very interesting question because I absolutely support the private individual's right to discriminate. I think that's essential to free society and a voluntary society. But when it comes to government, now your sexual orientation, preference, gender, or gender identity should have no impact on the government's treatment of individuals. Absolutely correct. The government should have to remain neutral. If we're going to have a government, it has to treat us all fairly. It's not allowed to discriminate, in my opinion. Government should have the authority to define, license, or restrict personal relationships. No, not a fan of that. Consenting adults should be free to choose their own sexual practices and personal relationships. Absolutely agree. Access to abortion should be regulated by the government. Now, here's an interesting one because I've seen abortion as a very, very big gray area. I do agree. I guess I would have to call myself pro-choice because I do agree with that option being there, but there are definitely limitations to that option. I'm not an up till the fucking baby leaves the womb, or excuse me, up until the unborn leaves the womb. It's not a baby. I don't agree with that at all. But I think access in the early terms, and cutting down the red tape on that, making it easier to have access. Now, I'm not saying taxpayer funded, obviously not, but access to abortion should be regulated by the government on some level. And again, under this system, if you lived in an anarcho-capitalist system, for instance, I would still agree with some sort of rules based around abortion rights. So access to abortion should be regulated, yes, and to a degree. So I'm actually this is the first not black or white answer here. Criminal laws should be limited to violation of the rights of others through force or fraud. So let's see, they should be limited to violation of the rights of others through force or fraud. Yeah, I would agree with that. No victim, no crime is a valid statement. Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah. Banned medicinal and recreational drugs should remain illegal. Absolutely not. I think all drugs should be legal. I think you should be free to choose. Police, fire, and ambulance services should be provided by the market. I actually agree with this, though I don't know that I would go all the way with it. My minarchism and my inner ANCAP are fighting each other right now, or what should happen. I mean, ideally, I would love to see all these things privatized. I think I did. You know what? Fuck it. Yeah, we're going to do that. Police, fire, and ambulance services should be provided by the market. Yeah, I'm cool with that. They should be provided by the market. Individuals who voluntarily assume risk of physical harm to themselves or a burden on society, and such behaviors should be banned. Well, the thing is, if you're a physical harm just to yourself, then no, it shouldn't be banned. If you're a physical harm to others, if you're directly causing harm to others, obviously that's not something we can tolerate. Restitution should be paid to victims at the expense of the criminal or negligent wrongdoer. Yeah, I think so. You did the crime, you got to pay, son. Rights such as due process and the presumption of innocence are relics of the past and only interfere with obtaining criminal convictions. No, due process is very important. The innocent until proven guilty standard is a hallmark of Western civilization. I think we did a really good thing there, and I say we as if I had something to do with it, but I think that was a really good move. Juries should be able to judge not just the facts of the case, but also the justice of the law. That's an interesting question. I've actually never thought about that. I'll probably have to leave that one in the middle. I would have to come back to that and actually think a bit more on it. Whether or not the jury should be able to decide. Interesting. I'm totally open to arguments on that one. Dispute resolution cannot be effectively provided by the market and thus require a government-controlled justice system. I don't think that it necessarily does. Though, I mean, I think the court system would probably be one of the last things I would like to get rid of that the government currently does. But to say that it cannot be effectively provided by the market, well, yeah, that's just not true at all, I don't think. Prisons as they currently exist should be abolished. I'm going to go here with that one. I'm going to go here. Because we've got a lot of problems with prisons. I'm thinking prisons specifically, the inner workings of the prisons. So there are definitely some issues there that I have. But I think you're always going to need something like prisons, so I can't go all the way with that one. The only legitimate use of force is in defense of individual rights, life, liberty, and justly acquired property against aggression. Yes, but not aggression principle, sirs. All people have the right to self-defense, and they may agree to be aided by any other individual or group. Yes, yes. Individuals do not have the right to keep and bear arms. I believe they do have the right to keep and bear arms. People should be prosecuted for exercising their right to self-defense. This isn't California. We're not doing that. Private property owners should be free to set the rules regarding the presence of weaponry on their own property. Yes, absolutely. I'm fine with weapons. I own a lot of weapons. But if you come to my house, I want to know if you have a weapon. And, well, first off, if you're coming to my house, you should be free to set... Oh, yes. Sorry, I went the wrong way with that one. Yeah, but if you are coming into my house without my permission, obviously I don't want you to have a weapon. But yes, it's my rules. My property, my rules. That simple. Government should restrict, register, and monitor the ownership, manufacture, and transfer of firearms and ammunitions. No. No. I don't agree. Respect for private property rights is fundamental to maintaining a free and prosperous society. To me, that's almost like a litmus test. If you do not think private property rights are fundamental to maintaining a free and prosperous society, this is what separates. This is what separates the quadrants right here. If you can't agree with this, like to me, that's like a litmus test for anybody. I don't see how you can consider yourself a libertarian, for instance, if you don't click this. Contracts to obtain, retain, profit from, manage, or dispose of one's private property should be regulated by the government. No. Why should it? Private property owners have the right to control and enjoy their property so long as their choices do not harm or infringe on the rights of others. Yes. Non-aggression principle. The practices of eminent domain and civil asset forfeiture should be abolished. Yes, they should. The state does not have the right to steal your shit. And civil asset forfeiture is this bizarre situation that anybody can support this, where the government can steal your shit just on an accusation. Like, before you've even been convicted, they can steal your things. Like, no, not having that. In order to protect the poor from the rich, limits on profits, production mandates, and controls on prices of goods and services are necessary. No, get out of here with that commie bullshit. For voluntary dealings, parties should be free to trade with who they want on mutually agreeable terms. Absolutely. And for whichever medium of trade they agree on, whether it be fiat dollars or silver, or if you guys like Bitcoin or whatever the hell you like. Private landowners do not have an incentive to maintain natural resources, and as such need to be regulated by the government. Well, as far as I can tell, the government doesn't really seem to have too much incentive to maintain natural resources. But I have an interesting thing. I go a little bit Ron Swanson with this about how all public parks should be privatized and ran by corporations for profit. Obviously that's a joke on the show. That's meant to be a joke. But I actually don't think that's too far off from reality. Because I think, the best parks in the world are privatized. And if you want any kind of role for government in that, it should be that it has to stay a park. You can't take over fucking Yellowstone and then just like knock everything down and put up oil wells or something. If you want to roll for government in that, go ahead. So private landowners do not have an incentive to man. Thus need to be regulated by the government. I'll go down. I'll at least go here. I'm not going to go all the way with that one. To prevent government pollution and misuse of natural resources, public land should be privatized. Yeah, okay, yeah, that's basically what I just said to the last question. Because the government pollutes, misuse of natural resources, public land should be privatized. There you go. Protecting the environment requires that resources like land, water, air, and wildlife be held in common and private ownership restricted. This is one of those things where I can see there's a role for government in there, but to say that private ownership gets restricted, no, I think it'll do well in the hands of private ownership. It's not like the government is doing a bang-up job at preserving the environment. The profit motive stifles the innovations and behavioral changes required to protect the environment, requiring intervention in the market. No, the profit motive actually does the exact opposite of that, because when there's demand, there's money to be made. And where there's money to be made, you're going to get the new technologies that are going to help things. Like, for instance, with the issue with climate change. Now, who's going to be better at who's going to be better at handling the problems we face with a changing climate? I don't think the government's going to be better at handling that, guys. You know, I think the reason a guy like me, who's not well off, can afford as many solar panels as he has, is because the market has done a really good job at mass producing the technology and getting the price point down. So I don't think profit motive stifles the innovations. The idea that a profit motive would stifle innovations on anything seems absolutely bizarre to me and backwards. Environmental advocates and social pressure are a more effective means of changing public behavior than government action. Yeah, I think that has been the trend in recent history. I think it's been the trend in the past. And it involves less infringement on people. Subsidies for energy production should be abolished. I'm for abolishing all subsidies. I don't think the government should subsidize anything. Energy pricing, allocation, and production are too important to be left to the market and should be controlled by the government. Well, no. I mean, the market doesn't do a perfect job of it, but the market does a better job than the government will do. To say that, like, energy, we should nationalize energy, allocation, and production, like, no. No. People who think they are entitled to keep what they earn are merely being selfish and should be forced to pay their fair share. Jesus Christ, did Bernie Sanders write this question? First off, fair share is a buzzword, and nothing's more selfish than saying you're entitled to someone else's things. So people who think they're entitled to keep what they earn, think about that. Imagine being called entitled for keeping what you earn. No. Taxation is the price we pay for civilization. No, it's not. It's not. I mean, voluntary contribution. We can have a system, and I want to have a system. I don't want to live on fucking dirt roads with no technology or anything like that. But I don't think that's where we're going to end up. I think things have to be voluntary in a free society. I don't think being extorted by the government, being forced and compelled to pay for things, you know, whether you use them or not. See, if in a free society, I think what we would do is the only things that we're going to have that are like community owned in any sense are going to be things that the community definitely wants, because people aren't going to voluntarily fund things they don't want. Now, taxes work in a completely different way. You pay for these things whether you use them or you want them or not. Government budgets should be balanced by curbing expenditure and not by raising taxes. Well, yeah, we should cut spending. But no president wants to do that. No Congress apparently wants to do that. It's not just the president. People should be free to choose which products and services they wish to purchase and not be forced to pay for something against their will. Exactly. That's why I'm not a fan of taxes. Free market banking, with competition among banks and depository institutions of all types, is preferable to a system controlled by a central bank. Absolutely it is. Profits and losses should be socialized. No. No, they should not. Individuals who engage in voluntarily exchange should be free to use as money any mutually agreed upon commodity or item. That's funny because I said that earlier. Whatever you want to use as a mutually agreeable commodity, go for it. Inflationary monetary policies and legal tender laws should be abolished. Yes, I would like to see us get back to gold and silver. Money should be abolished. Well, no. I guess that would depend on what you mean by money. I think gold and silver are money. Individuals have the right to form corporations, cooperatives, and other types of entities based on voluntary association. Absolutely. And I think this is one of the things that separates people on the libertarian right from the quote-unquote libertarian left, is in the system like I'm advocating for, if you want a worker co-op, where like the workers own the company, and that's all agreed upon by people at the start, I'm 100% for it. Go ahead. Knock yourself out. I mean, you want to go live on a commune and just do fucking bong hits and play with your friends in a drum circle? If that's how you want to live your life, go for it. But you don't have the right to take other people's things. You don't have a right to organize with a bunch of workers and say, like, now we own the company because there's more of us than there is of you. It has to be voluntary. If it's not voluntary, it's infringement. So I would say, yes, they have the right to form all those things if they wish. Private ownership of the means of productions should be abolished. No, comrade. Subsidies and bailouts to business, labor, and other special interests should be abolished. Not a fan of bailouts. Public entities should be able to compete with private enterprises. This is interesting because like the wording is bizarre to me, because I would say if we are going to have public entities, they should be forced to compete with private enterprises. I don't like monopolies. I don't like monopolies when it's in the private sector any more than I like them when they are in the public sector. And by the way, most private sector monopolies exist because of the public sector. Yeah, well, I would say they should be forced, but that's not what it says. They should be able. Sure. Yeah, we'll do that. Employment and compensation agreements between employers and employees are private and should not be encumbered by social engineering. I absolutely agree. It should be voluntary. Private employers and employees should be required by law to bargain with each other through a labor union. No, though I support your right if you want to unionize in private, not with the help of the government, not with the force of the state. Yeah, absolutely. You should be able to unionize if you wish. Membership in a labor union should be a requirement. No. Compulsory arbitration and obligations to bargain are necessary to ensure that bosses do not exploit their workers. No. It's certainly not compulsory. I'm fine with workers unionizing and bargaining, but like I say, it has to be private. You can't have the force of the state on your side doing this. Let's see. Provision of education should be socialized, made available free of charge. No, because I don't think the government has done a good job with education. I did a video on this before with the defund the police narrative. That's one of the things that those people were advocating for. And no, the government already has a monopoly on education. We spend more on education than almost any other country on the planet, and we get some of the shittiest results. So monopolies need to be broken up. Most monopolies are either created or ran by the state. Education is best provided by the free market, achieving greater quality, accountability, and efficiency with more diversity of choice. I agree with this. I wish there was more of that. There's not nearly enough. It's like every fucking private school has to be like a religious school. I'm not a fan of that. I want the market to be much more competitive. But right now, when everybody is forced to pay for public education, whether they go there or not, whether they even have children or not. I don't even have children at this point, and my wife and I have to pay this. We pay this through property taxes. So I would rather see the market do it. I think the market does pretty much everything with greater quality, accountability, and efficiency than sociopath bureaucrats in government. The education of children is the financial responsibility of parents or guardians, not the government. It is. Whether you like that or not, it is ultimately your responsibility if you're going to have children to educate them. Health insurance companies exploit the sick and dying to make a profit, therefore should be regulated by the government. Most of the quote-unquote exploitation that goes on in healthcare, again, is at the hands of government, because government creates pharmaceutical monopolies. Our patent laws are insane. Intellectual property rights guarantee that if you have a patent on a certain type of medicine, you have exclusive marketing rights to that. You have a monopoly given to you by the government. So no, the government is at fault here. Individuals should be free to determine the level of health insurance they want, if any. Absolutely. Oh my God, what a radical idea that you could have freedom in choosing your health care. Healthcare should be provided by the free market. It should. A free market that is not overly taxed and overly regulated and crippled and burdened with bureaucracy, yes. Not the healthcare that we have, but the healthcare that I would like to see us have. Suicide and euthanasia should be illegal. No, you should be free to do so if you wish. Provision of healthcare should be socialized and made available free of charge. I thought I already answered that. Not all individuals would take responsibility for planning their retirement. Therefore, an age pension should be provided. No, Social Security is a Ponzi scheme. Socialized welfare programs should be phased out and replaced with a private voluntary system based on insurance, charity, and mutual aid. Absolutely. Most people will not voluntarily help the poor. Therefore, it is incumbent on the government to provide welfare services so as to combat poverty. No, disagree. I think the war on poverty since LBJ in '65 has been largely a failure. It's created more problems than it's solved. Charity and civil society will weaken if government does not have the power to direct such activity. First off, the government doesn't do charity, and the government doesn't create civil society. Charity is private. It's voluntary. That's the difference. In order to preserve global stability, the government needs to embrace foreign political alliances and act as policemen of the world. No. We're done bombing countries. Service in the military should be compulsory. No. Should be voluntary. Rights are not inalienable and can be suspended during times of war. No, because then they're not rights, they're privileges. Intelligence agencies would be instructed from preserving security if they were subject to oversight and transparency. Yes, I think so. Intelligence agencies, would be obstructed. No. No, they should have to have transparency and oversight. Government should not use secret classification to keep things from the public. Information that it should have. Agreed. Foreign policy should seek to help or seek to keep a nation in a position of strength relative to other nations. Yeah, I agree with that. Foreign policy should emphasize defense against attack from abroad and enhance the likelihood of peace by avoiding. Yes. Foreign intervention, including military and economic aid, are necessary to preserve the security of a nation. No, man, sometimes, shit, I'm gonna slightly disagree with that statement. It's not like there's never a need for foreign intervention. Not like there's never a need. We just way overuse it. All people have the right to resist tyranny and defend themselves and their rights. Absolutely. Impediments to free trade should be abolished. Yes, and no more tariffs. Political freedom and escape from tyranny demand that individuals not be unreasonably constrained in the crossing of borders. Now this is a tough one for me. In a perfect world, and in a world that would get me to support open borders, we would not have a drug war and we would not have a welfare state. We do have a drug war and we do have a welfare state. So this is one of those things where I would say ideally yes, but in practicality no. This is the bit where I'm hanging on here to I think is a need in the current system for the state for this one. Political freedom and escape from tyranny demand that individuals not be unreasonably. Well, see, you get kind of lost in the language of what is reasonable and not. So I'm going to just do this. I'm going to go about halfway there. Trade should be regulated by the government. No, it shouldn't. It should be free. Economic freedom demands the unrestricted movement of humans as well as financial capital across national borders. Economic freedom demands unrestricted movement of humans. Man, again, it's like in this system that we have, I don't think that's the case. But I do think economic freedom demands unrestricted movement. I got to go here with that one. All people are born with an inherent right to life, liberty, and property. Yes, John Locke. Some rights can impose an obligation upon others to fulfill that right. Only positive rights can. Positive rights can, but I do not support positive rights. But again, that's not the question. Some rights can impose obligations. Yeah, I'm not a fan of positive rights. Government should neither deny nor abridge human rights based upon biological characteristics or personal purpose. If the government's going to exist, it should not be allowed to discriminate. Members of private organizations can set standards of association, and individuals are free to respond with ostracism or boycotts. Absolutely. Parents or other guardians have the right to raise their children according with their own standards and beliefs. Yes. Parents should be able to abuse and neglect their children without fear of intervention. No, I don't think under any system we can allow that. Even under a private system, you would have some kind of a rule set up where we cannot have this happening. Without the state, there would be chaos and disorder. I think you have a lot of chaos and disorder with the state. And this is one of my issues with anarcho-capitalism, is I do think you're inevitably going to have something that resembles the state. But then again, the argument for minarchism is it's going to be really hard to keep the government small. So I'm kind of at a toss-up here, though I don't think I would agree there would necessarily be chaos and disorder. But you're also going to have something like a state, so I'm going to go there. It is the right of every individual to resist tyranny and abolish it, replacing it with a system that respects human right. Yes. The state should be abolished. Oh. Ooh. Ooh. Yeah, I'm going to go here. My minarchism puts me here. Let's see. Economic culture. Let's get everything back out here. I ended up way down there. Oh. Look at that. Libertarian capitalist. You support light restrictions on both economic and cultural freedom. You opposed increased economic regulations and the abolition of the state. Well, there you go, guys. Spec. go ahead and get yourself specced on the political spectrum. Thanks for tuning in. I already knew I was a libertarian capitalist, but now it has just been confirmed. I know this has been a long video, but thanks everybody for checking in, and I'll see y'all later.